Hello, everybody. Welcome to Instrumental Breakthroughs, psychedelic origin stories of your favorite creative superheroes. I am your host, Daniel Shankin. I am the program director of Mount Tam Psychedelic Integration. We do psychedelic preparation integration coaching for people who want to heal and grow and live and love. And you can find us at tamintegration.com. We're hosted by Brian at Deadhead Land. We're very grateful for him to allow us to use his platform. So thank you, Brian. And we're also really grateful for the guys over at Livestream Remote who are helping us with our tech. I am really happy and honored to have today's guest who you're familiar with his work, maybe even if you don't know you're familiar with his work. He has photographed some of the most amazing bands in the world, including the Grateful Dead. He has a brand new book out called Just Jerry. And so please welcome Bob Minkin. Bob, thanks for being here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And people can find you at Bob Minkin Photography and .com and places like that.
Yep.
So, the theme of the show is exploring how psychedelics and creativity go hand in hand. And one of the things that we've been finding is that people get inspired and they get challenged by having these experiences with plant medicines or sacred science or whatever you want to call it. And then that they go on to kind of express their vision and what they have discovered through their art. And, the tagline is psychedelic origin stories of our favorite creative superheroes. And that's you today. You're our creative superhero. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us, maybe some of the origins, the psychedelic origins that have created this remarkable being that we are beholding with eyes of great love today.
Oh, wow. That'd be great if some of that was true. So I was an adventurous sort, as a kid. And when I started hanging out with a different crowd, the crowd that led to, drugs and music, I kind of jumped right in. I was really curious about, the whole aspects of getting high. So all of that kind of came together really at the same time almost with different groups of people I was hanging with in terms of beginning to get high, smoking hash, smoking pot, and getting turned on to the music. The music was at the time like Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Cream, Jethro Tull, Allman Brothers, Grateful Dead. And so it just seemed to happen in a magical time for me. And that was in the fall of 1972 when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the time, I was always an artist. I always liked to draw. I wound up going to art school, and I still do that in my other life as a graphic designer. But so I just started drawing. I like to copy the art off of some of the psychedelic albums, like the inside of the Allman Brothers' Eat a Peach, to me looked like a fantasy land that I wanted to be in. And I knew, the Allman Brothers had that mushroom motif and such. So I was very interested then in trying psychedelics, and a friend of mine, Frank, he suggested that we can do acid. I was like, oh yes, let's do this. So this was in June 1973. I had just turned 14, and we got the stuff. I had to wait outside the house where he got it from. And
I hate waiting outside the house.
Well, I wasn't cool enough to go in the house.
No,
so
I get
had to
it.
wait
Yeah.
outside the house. So finally he came outside, and I'm like, let me see it. And he showed me the tiniest little pill I've ever seen. And he says, and we're going to cut this in half. I was like, cut this in half? Like, how could that little thing do anything? Well, it did. I found out how powerful LSD could be. So I don't remember a lot from that trip. I remember bits and pieces, because again, I was very young and I didn't have a lot of context for things and my thoughts and what it meant to me. So I wound up, a few months went by, and then I started doing it again more rapidly in the context of being at a friend's house, listening to good music with other friends who were tripping. So then it became a lot different, a lot more what I was sort of imagining it might be. Because in a communal setting with the right music and friends, it became an otherworldly experience.
Yes.
You know, it was like an adventure that I didn't know I was looking for. And that kind of just led me on, you know. We went from, you know, we did it at friends' homes because at that point we were too young to go to concerts, you know, shows. But then once I started going to shows, which was the following year in '74, I started taking it for that. Like the second concert I went to was at New Riders Purple Sage with the Commander Cody Band opening at a free show in Central Park. And, you know, I never did acid in the daytime, like outside in a park setting with like 50,000 people. And it was great, you know, it was wonderful, you know. And I mean, by the time I came home for dinner at my parents' house, I was already over, you know. It's like, what'd you do today? Oh, you don't want to know. So anyway, that's kind of the early origins of my psychedelic experiences. I mean, they continued, of course. I mean, the first time I saw Jerry play, which was a few months after that in November '74, I knew for sure I was going to take acid for that. That was no question about it. So my setting really to take acid was at concerts. That's the only times really I ever took it through the '70s and through the '80s before I stopped.
Right. So I'm curious. So on one hand, you know, you're telling in the story that, you know, I went to the show and then I came home from the show, and my parents said, "What did you do?" And you say, "Oh my God, you don't want to know," because
well, I didn't say
we all
that
know,
because they
right,
would have been like, "What do you mean?"
right. But the idea is that, you know, most of us listening sort of have this implicit understanding of what you're talking about, whereas like on the outside, basically you just stood there and looked at a band, right? But there's this whole internal process that happens.
Oh yeah.
Will you
Yeah.
share some of the internal process of being at the Central Park show?
Well, again, I was very young for that, and I only remember bits and pieces. I remember thinking like, you know, there's a DJ, a famous DJ in New York, Alison Steele, the Nightbird, and she had the greatest voice, you know, but I had no idea what she looked like. And she came on stage to announce the band, and I was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. You know, things like that. Probably would have said that anyway if I wasn't tripping. But again, I was with some of my friends. I remember one friend was getting too intense for him, and maybe he took more than we did, and we had to go out of the crowd to kind of keep him sort of calmed down and stuff. But I remember the music was just, you know, again, I didn't have the context because it was only the second concert I went to. And I was like, are they all like this? You know? So, I mean, I didn't trip at every single show I went to, but I did do quite a few. And like, for example, at Radio City Music Hall, when I saw the Grateful Dead there, I took acid the first night, and they had an incredible light show. And I remember the light show looked so three-dimensional, it looked like you can go into it, you know, almost, right? But then I remember the next night when I didn't trip and I saw the same light show, I thought, wow, it looks more ordinary to me. I was wondering what I was thinking the day before. But even at the day before at that show, at the first night I did it, I remember the music thinking, this is like the symphony from heaven. I mean, it just sounded so good that, I mean, it just sort of cements that in your DNA. Like, you know, why do you like the Grateful Dead? Well, like moments like that, you know, made a lasting impression.
Right. And so what was it like as it evolved? Because I started a little young too. You know, I was, you know, 13 or 14 when I first tried LSD. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that, you know, we were talking before the show about how as we age, our lives get more complicated and our minds get more full of things, and there's more issues to work on and things like that. And so it was a couple of years before the inner work happened and things started to shift, and it started to work on me and through me in a different way. What was that? How did it shift for you over time?
Well, you know, it seems like most of the times I did it, I was in junior high school and high school. You know, once I got out of high school, I went to a school in New York called School of Visual Arts. And I guess my life just became just a little more serious because I was actually thinking of like my future, you know. And I just, you know, things like even just getting high in general became less and less for me by the time I was in college. I mean, there were some moments, some special moments, like, like seeing the Dead New Year's Eve at Winterland, which was during my first year of college, and I took acid. So I became extremely particular about the times that I would take acid. And so they became fewer and far between, from 77 into the 80s. Like I was in Europe on the Europe Grateful Dead tour. I took acid with me to do a few times because I thought that would be special. And then really only just a couple more times in the 80s, like once at New Haven in 83. And then the last time, which was I wasn't even planning to, when I was visiting San Francisco with my buddy, we got in on a fluke to see Garcia play at the Fillmore, a small venue, famous, the original Fillmore venue. And then this guy there had acid that my friend knew, and he took it without really a thought. And he was like, "Do you want to take it?" And I hadn't done acid at that point in about 5 years. But I was like, "Hey, I'm in San Francisco. I'm seeing the Garcia at the Fillmore, and it's my last night here. Why not?" Anyway, I'm so glad I did, because that was the last time I did acid until recent years. And I just went off on a high note, with that trip, because first I thought it wasn't going to hit me. And I thought, well, whatever. And then during the intermission, it hit. And during the intermission, on the wall of the Fillmore, they played old cartoons and like clips from like amusement parks in 1940s when people are on these wild rides and stuff. And then that's when it hit. And then the lights went down and Jerry came on stage. And I was like, this is perfect. So, but I never did it since then until in the last few months, which is another story.
Right. So one of the things I'm curious about, we were talking about, you're a visual guy, right? You look at things, you look through your lens, you frame things out. And so you're talking about the light show at Radio City, and you're seeing it and you're understanding that it's special. And I mean, it's my guess that probably that informs, like how does the way you see things become informed by the medicine and vice versa?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because I've done it from an early age on. So I can't, it's hard to say like A and B, like what if I didn't do it, how it would influence me? What if I did do it, how it would influence me? I can only speak to how it does influence me. So for example, with photography, which is, I do a lot of, I see shots, and I don't know what it is, but I see shots sometimes even when I can't see them. I just know they're coming, and maybe it's just my familiarity with the music and the scene in general. But, a lot of times people say, you always seem to capture those moments and stuff. And I could see it happening, or I could be in the middle of a conversation with somebody and just be like, like it just kind of comes together in my mind. And I don't know how much, psychedelics have to do with that. It very well could have a good part of that. It's almost like a premonition when I know something's about to happen that's good, something I want to get, or position myself in a place where I'm expecting something to happen. And more often than not, it does happen. Yeah, sometimes they don't, but more often than not they do. So I'm always looking at really relationships of shapes. It all comes down to shapes. Like, so if you're looking at a complicated scene and you squint your eyes, it breaks it down into just the shapes, the lights and the shadows. And that's kind of the building block of, the image.
Right. And so now what I'm picturing is I'm picturing shapes with faces, because on one hand, I can see how the shapes would be evocative, but, looking at these band members that you have a relationship with, even if they don't have a relationship with you necessarily personally, right? Like it feels personal, and we relate, like so much of our relationship with the band is through things like photographs, right? It's like and then, we sort of project, on one hand, we're learning about them by looking at the pictures, and we're learning about their moods and, kind of what makes them laugh or smile or what have you, what they think is intense. And on the other hand, we're projecting what we want to see on there. And So how does that sort of play, like where you're the in between, like you are the gatekeeper of that?
Yeah, really, yeah, in a sense, a gatekeeper, sometimes I think of it as like kind of a gatekeeper of people's memories, because as a
Mm-hmm.
gatekeeper, really, I started doing this because I wanted it to be for my own memories,
Mm-hmm.
and then once I felt like other people were digging it and I felt like I was getting better at it, then I just put it out there in the world and,
Mm-hmm.
started getting, published and stuff like that. But really, when people visualize a memory of a show they were at, it's usually a pictures, because there's a lot of times it's
Yes.
hard to, in your mind, remember exactly how it was, whether it's my picture or someone else's picture. That becomes the basis of the person's memory, the expression on the musician's face, or what was happening. Were they happy? Were they unhappy? Were they in the middle of a breakup with their significant other? Were they this, that? It can bring up all kinds of emotions,
Mm-hmm.
what was going on in their life at the time, and it does that for me. Like when I put together my books, it forces me basically to relive my life since I'm a
Right.
teenager and go through it, and it is an emotional experience for me. It's good and bad.
How so?
So,
Tell me
well,
more about that.
it just reminds me of certain things that was going on in my life at the time, and some things were great, and some things, were always not so great.
Mm-hmm.
Certain, usually having to do with relationships you may have had with people and friends, and whether they be just your close friends you grew up with, and people who are not here anymore. Women I may have had had relationships with. So things that it just forces you, your relationship with your parents. I mean, it gets, big. So what you were doing at that time in your life, or where were you working, were you happy with what you were doing? Were you unhappy with what? So, the whole thing of happiness and unhappy anyway is a transitory feeling. It's nobody really could just be happy or unhappy, hopefully not unhappy all the time. It comes and goes, but forcing me to look through all those pictures was like looking at a reel of your life,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the funnest thing I did, was doing all those things. And
How does the photography help you heal those things and move through them, move past them, let them go?
well, yeah, that's interesting too, because you can come to things that are good things. Good, you can kind of focus more on the good things that you're grateful for, that you give gratitude for. Like, there I am with my young daughter, she's seeing her first Grateful Dead show, and I feel that
Mm-hmm.
sense of like, uh, I did something good, she's got to see this thing, before it went away, or, my one of my children meeting a band member, let's say, and it was a nice interaction. The band member, made them feel a little special in the interaction, as opposed to some other things, which is like, oh man, that time, God, I was so, whatever, So it's, you look through pictures to evoke a different,
Yeah.
feelings.
You reminded me of a time, if you don't, I play guitar. I'm not good, but I play it. And
Better than me.
right. Yeah. I mean, is something better than nothing is is a big question to maybe be contemplated on LSD. Um, and there was a girl I dated, and it hurt when we broke up, right? It was painful. And she liked Greg Brown. You know Greg Brown?
No, I don't think so.
Singer-songwriter, brilliant guy. Really fun, kind of calm Pacific Northwest energy. And I just remember it was coming up for me. It was many years later, and it was coming up for me, and it was painful. And I got the Greg Brown album that she used to listen to all the time, and I made myself learn all the songs. And I made myself play them all until it didn't hurt anymore.
You worked through it.
And I literally worked through it. And it was really, really healing in a way that, I don't even know where I came up with the idea to do it. I just kind of knew that I had to. And I'm just kind of, what you're saying about creating books, it seems like there's parts of that in there.
Yeah, it really forces you to think about a lot of things. And I have to admit, going through the books I did, I mean, I would get teary in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
Thinking of some moments. It could be good teary or bad teary, So it's an emotional experience for sure going through that. But a great one. I mean, I have more I'm going to be doing, and I'm willing to take that on again.
Now, what about newer bands that you are working with? Bands that have the same like amazing energy that is sort of worth interacting with, that you really feel like you're getting to, I guess, be that gatekeeper, be that channel of their energy for the people.
Yeah, there's well, living here in Marin County, we have two amazing clubs in the world here. We have Terrapin Crossroads and Sweetwater Music Hall. So in addition to the clubs that are in San Francisco, so there's no shortage of opportunities to see and interact with these other bands. So yeah, there's a few that I have special relationships with, like most of the people that play down at Terrapin, but specifically like the David Nelson Band world,
sure,
and the Steve Kimmock world of people. And then in other, in the Grateful Dead, more not tribute cover. I don't know. It's never can never find the good word for that. But family, yes. Bands like Dark Star, who I've become very friendly with. I mean, I know some of the players in that band for many years, and a more newer band that I've gotten hooked up with, Jerry's Middle Finger. They're they're especially good and take on a great energy, and a guitar player, a young guitar player by the name of Zach Nugent, who he's based now in Vermont.
He's so fun.
He used to play with Melvin in the JGB band, and he just blows my mind. So there's so much greatness out there that it doesn't make me feel, we all miss Jerry, and of course, but we're so lucky that we have this out there continuing at a very high level for us still to, be in that world with our friends.
I think I first heard Zach at Jerry Day, at the Jerry Garcia Amphitheater with Melvin. And so I'm wondering if you ever photographed that, and what's that's like, and B, what was it like to miss Jerry Day this year?
Well, I have a good relationship with the folks at Jerry Day, Tom Murphy, who puts it on, and all the players and stuff. Oh yeah, and how could I not mention Stu Allen? By the way, he's like he's practically the real McCoy boy around these parts.
He's great.
He's as good as it gets. Stu. But Jerry Day, I've shot probably all the Jerry Days, or just about all the Jerry Days. And this year it was very definitely, it's one of the highlights of the year. That, and also when they do the Jerry Garcia Grateful Dead Appreciation Night at the Giants game. That's always a special event. And, due to the COVID, of course, we all had to pivot and do things a little differently. And hopefully we'll get back to that before too long. But yeah, but I was at that show you were talking about at Jerry Day with Zach and Melvin. Yeah, it's just great that we could bring the whole tribes, the tribes together again, and shake our bones,
Indeed. Who are you really looking forward to photographing when this is all happening again?
Wow, shoot. I think I'll have tears in my eyes next time I'm at Terrapin or Sweetwater, seeing Bobby up there, or Phil on stage with Stu and Goobs and, the rest of the cats. I'm looking forward to it all, when I could see that. It'll be like, because it'll make us, I mean, at this point, with the air we have right outside, which is very, very smoky here due to the fires, I'll never take fresh air for granted again.
Right.
Just as I'll never take seeing live music for granted ever. Every day is a gift. That's what it taught me. I was going to possibly just show a few photos, maybe if you want.
Yeah, I would love you to. And I do think that was one of the lessons of seeing music on Psychedelics, was the understanding of the perfect moment. Of how, like, oh my God, this moment is perfect, and sort of the understanding that it can't last. It can't last. It will change. And, there would be those moments when they would announce a show at Terrapin. There's like, oh, Phil is playing at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday. You can come by if you want. He's starting in 2 hours. These kinds of events, and the weather is perfect.
Ah,
There's it's the right amount of people, and you have plenty of space, and your friends are there, and it's just like, oh wow, this is really one of those moments. And I mean, you must have that understanding as well, because it's kind of your job to capture them.
right. My trip, I'm shooting things like that, is to try to capture the peak moments of it. When it gets looked back upon, it brings, if you weren't at the show, it'll make you kind of feel like you were at the show. And if you were at the show, it'll bring you back to that feeling. That's my goal, because I'm a fan too. And that's how I want to feel when I look at the photos. So, I mean, I think about the music scene here. I did a book a few years ago called The Music Never Stopped, Marin County's music scene. And it's a real time capsule of 30 years of music in Marin County, with a heavy emphasis on the recent years, from when Terrapin and Sweetwater reopened in 2012. And I just hope that book doesn't become a historical book, like this is the way it was. I hope, I just pray it gets to come back that way, But
Right.
but to your point about, the perfect moment, there are some things that are ingrained in my head that I'll just never forget. And even though they were a long time ago, and one of them was at the Palladium in New York. The Grateful Dead did a 5-night run there in May '77, and the last night was a Wednesday night, actually, school night. It was May 4th, '77, and me and my friend Dino, we were pretty out there for that, but we had great seats, 5th row seats, center, like right in front of Jerry. And they did Comes a Time. They broke into this Comes a Time, and I'll tell you, everything else disappeared. Jerry sang it with such beauty, and the guitar solo was just so graceful. I listen to that to this day a lot, and I think of it as, even of course not tripping, and even it's just ingrained in my DNA as such a beautiful moment. Like, wow, how could this ever continue? Kind of thing. And it did, at least for a number more years.
Right. That's gorgeous. You were going to show us some photos.
Yeah, I'll take you for a quick ride down some photos. I'll do a little screen share here.
Okay.
I'll
And
just
do try to describe them pretty well, because this is going to go out into audio as well.
Sure. Oh yeah. I'll describe each one. The photos are like my children. People tell me, well, what's your favorite shot? And I go, oh, they're like my children, but sometimes some I like a little better than others. So let me click on screen share here and see if we get this going. All right. So
Who's that guy?
Yeah, who's that guy? That's the early version of me in the '70s at my parents' house, my parents' kitchen, by the looks of it. I was all in by this point. I was probably like 16 or so there, and made it a little rough for the home life, but I persevered. And my mother tells me now, I'm so proud of you. I don't think she was so much then. But anyhow, so my first trip to San Francisco was in August '77. I was 18 years old, and I took some acid with me with the hopes that I'd find a cool thing to take it at. And this was a cool thing to take it at. I just found this show was playing at the Embarcadero, Jerry Garcia Band, and it was a daytime show, a benefit for Greenpeace. A friend of mine sent me this photo. I don't know who actually took it. Otherwise, I would certainly give credit. It looks like in this photo, somebody's trying to get my attention. I'm looking back towards them. But there I am, high on LSD at the Jerry Garcia show. My first time in San Francisco. I was only there for a few days. And I was saying, man, I'm going to move here one day.
What a great jacket, too.
So I was an artist. I painted that.
Okay, you painted your own Bertha.
I painted my own Bertha, exactly. That jacket disappeared, unfortunately, a few months later, up in Rochester Binghamton weekend of Grateful Dead, November 5th and 6th, 77. It was chilly, you know, I had another sweater or whatever. My friend, I gave it to my friend to wear. And the show, the crush inside, the way, the mania that was going on, when he came out of the show, the shirt wasn't on him. I was like, what happened to the shirt? He goes, somebody like took it right off my back, like in the crush. So anyway, but
I love that. I love, like, there's a memory. It's like I painted my own Skull and Roses shirt, and it got stolen on this date.
yeah, a few months later.
A set break on the second night. I lost my shirt.
I know. It's crazy. I'm very date oriented when it comes to this. I know. I remember every detail. It's crazy. But there's Jerry with his Travis Bean, and the little thing here said, "Ass, gas, or grass. No one rides for free." And I thought to myself, "Wow, that's not a very Jerry-like sentiment, but it's more of a Hell's Angels sentiment, actually." But so I took my first really good shot of Jerry at this particular show. So from that viewpoint where I was, I took this photo. And after this, I started to think, maybe there's some hope for me here. Maybe I have a future in this. You know?
Let's just keep doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did, and let me move on here. So here's a show I shot. Actually, this was a year before. I went up to, so the Dead were playing in Syracuse, New York. I was living in Brooklyn, New York. And my friend and I, we were pot dealers at the time, so we had some extra money. So my friend and I, we took a plane flight and flew up from LaGuardia Airport to Syracuse. We had no tickets, and we didn't really even know where the Grateful Dead were playing. We just knew they were playing in Syracuse. So we asked a cab driver to drive us around. So he finally took us found the place, the War Memorial, the Onondaga County War Memorial. They wound up making a Dick's Picks of this show. So, you know, going to a show without having any way to stay afterwards or all of that, let's take acid, you know. So we did that. Here's a photo I took during the show. I just held the camera over my head, little Kodak Instamatic. So after the show, we had the bright idea of let's go by the backstage door and let's see if we could meet Jerry Garcia or one of the band members. So we didn't meet Jerry Garcia, but we did meet Bob Weir, who walked by the steps and gave me a look, a wide-eyed look at that. And it became one of my first like kind of cool shots. Like,
oh man, what a lapel.
Yes, that was a very 1970s lapel for sure.
And that suit that mostly fits. That was before Bobby had suits that were tailored suits. That's great.
Yeah, he was probably, let's see, in 76. So what was he? He was like 29 here.
Right.
29 years old. Seems so young, right? Somebody's 29. But yet there was Bob Weir, 29. There he is on stage, sans suit, but with the lapel.
Right.
And then another run I did was Winterland. I came out again that December to see them at the New Year's shows. So that's a whole story unto itself that I've told many times, where I took a bus cross country by myself, and I lost my wallet with the tickets in the Greyhound bus station when I arrived. But I won't get into that story, but it all worked out. There I was in front of the venue and made it inside. That's a shot I took inside the venue. Somebody had a sign, that Dark Star thing, and they put up numbers like 1,362 days since last SF Dark Star, something like that. And each night they added another number onto it. The Dead didn't play Dark Star that run, nonetheless.
Still an amazing show.
Oh yeah, that run, 12/29, 30, and 31/77.
Historic.
Oh yeah, and for me it was like, you know, they lit up the ball. And here, this night I was tripping. I was right up close with my new Minolta 50mm lens camera. And look how close they stayed together. I mean, you know, I was just like, my head was blown. It was like I'm seeing it in San Francisco, hometown show for them at the famous venue. You know, Winterland was really the only last of the venues left. You know, all the other ones were gone at that point. So for me, it was my last chance to see them in one of the, you know, the legendary places like the Avalon or the Fillmore West. And
what's it say on his hat?
Oh, you know, it's like a truck company. I think it's or a racing car, McLaren.
McLaren.
I think it was like a race car or something. And then the other night, I remember he had a BMW shirt. They were fond of BMWs. There's the balloons coming down. I mean, I made sure I got right up front. Let's see any others from that. Oh, yeah, here's another one. All standing close together, a lot of interaction. Oh, a friend of mine just bought this base at an auction, the Phil's Mission Control base.
Oh, right on.
I know I'm going to get a chance to hold it when COVID is over and I can actually go to his house. Here's some unpublished shots from that show I never really put out there. Jerry just laying it down. So, you know, tripping, people say, well, how is that like, you know, being high and photographing a show? I said, well, I don't know, it's fine. There's no problem at all.
Well, it sort of seems like there's a certain kind of muscle memory. You know, I sort of remember when I started to kind of write poetry or article, you know, things that I wanted to write on psychedelics. There was a bit of a learning curve where I had to, you know, kind of relearn how to hold the pen, but then it was fine.
Yeah, well, you know, starting young and doing it a lot, at least photography, and then, you know, tripping, stuff like that helps. I'll go back to some more photos after. I got some more stories if we have time, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. What, it's something you jogged your memory?
Oh, well, no, just, you know, just thinking of things. I mean, like, you know, we were talking earlier about getting, you know, I took a break from tripping because we're doing anything like, even getting high in general, because, you know, like we were talking earlier, my life just become more complicated. You know, I mean, I was like working in an office in Manhattan, you know, and in graphic design. I mean, that's what I went to school for, and shooting shows at night for Relix Magazine. But I just seemed like it just never didn't seem to be a right time or moment really to do acid again after that show in '88. You know, in fact,
Right.
we moved. My wife and I moved out here to San Francisco area in 1990.
And when were your kids born?
They're born in 94 and 97.
Okay.
So, you know,
because I know that puts a crimp in the exploration.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, I'm a responsible parent. You know? I mean, you know, I'm not going to be like, you know,
Sure.
I mean, I you know, that became a priority, of course. So, you know, they're in their 20s now, so they're pretty self-sufficient in a lot of ways. But you know, in the past few years, I had a pining for it to do it again. And the first pining I really remember was this show I was at about 8 years ago now. It's called Lazy Summer Days Festival out in the Sierra Mountains, Pinecrest, California. It was a festival, and of course, Lazy Summer Days, LSD. All my favorite bands were playing there. I mean, Zero was playing there, David Nelson Band, Melvin, I mean, Colonel Bruce Hampton, I mean, all this stuff. I really came close that night, and I should have, you know, but I was still, you know, have an interjection.
But I mean, why doesn't Zero play more often?
Oh yeah, well they was one of my favorite bands. I mean, when they're on,
amazing.
And when they're on, and when they play, they're usually on. I mean, it's really an otherworldly experience. So good. So, you know, and then in more recent times, I was at a party a few years ago where a friend of mine offered me some microdose, and I did it, and I was having a great time. Like a couple hours in, I said to my wife, I took some acid. She goes, you did? She was surprised. She's like, you did? She goes, how is it? I said, it's great. But then more time went by, and I was like, all right, that's it. So a friend of mine who I like to go hiking with, he has access to acid, and he's somebody I know and love, you know, very close with. So in the past few months, we've been going on these rigorous hikes, and we do microdose on the hikes. So as opposed to being at a show, which I certainly won't rule out when we have shows again, but being out on these trails in the majesty of Mount Tam is something you know, it just brings me back to, it makes me feel like the real, you know, like that Who song, The Real Me. It makes me feel like the real me, like who I really am, you know, being out there on the trail like that, under the influence of that. It just centers me, and it just makes me happy. What can I say? So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I look forward. So I tell people who are sometimes when I bring it up, I said, microdosing is a great way to re-enter the psychedelic world in case you haven't visited there in a while.
Right. Now, have you found that it affects your mind or your life off the mountain?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me calmer in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially these days. I mean, right now, the anxiety meter for a lot of people, including myself, family, is, way in the red zone between the political situation and the racial inequality and, this virus that you can't run away from. And now this, at least centralized around here, the smoke fire situation, we had to be prepared to evacuate last week. And we got all stuff, for, okay, what's important? What has to go? We had to do that exercise last week. So I don't know. I think the LSD has a residual clarity it gives you. I mean, I personally think really just about everybody should try it. I mean, at least try it, If it's not for you, that's fine. But people should at least dip their toe in it and see.
Right. So what you're saying is that everybody should go to Bob Minkin Photography to order their microdoses.
No. You can get a cool photo that will remind you of the time that you did acid at a great show. But no, we do not offer anything like
right. No, I get it. I mean,
we offer the memories.
No, I get several emails a week, where people
Where can I get some?
Yeah. It's like, that's not what we do. But there was one photo you showed me earlier that you sort of slid past.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The one with you and the peyote.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even get to that one.
But so wait, but we have a choice point. We could either talk about that photo or I'm also kind of curious because you were saying you were starting to photograph some of the protests and the civil unrest and things of that nature.
Oh, these days, yeah.
Yeah, is that something? I mean, we're all thinking about it. Is that something you feel like talking about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That is something. I'm a documenter. I mean, I have this need to document and photograph things. I always have, and this is a sign of our times, and it's something that's happening right here. I mean, even when the Neowise comet was here, I went out 4 nights, finding good spots to shoot it, and so. These events to me resonate with me, civil rights. I mean, because I grew up in New York and there was I grew up amongst heavy racism and heavy overt racism where I lived and stuff. And naturally that's something strongly against. And these protests, I feel, is something that I need to document. So even though there was COVID, I mean, I stayed on the periphery. I didn't want to get in the middle of people. I had to watch out for my own safety in terms of, COVID, wearing a mask and staying on the side where I can move away quickly if I need to. And of course, if there was the possibility, there's always the possibility of violence at these things.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be, that person, So I photographed a few, and I've even photographed a pro-Trump rally. And I just, I want this stuff to be documented so people can see how things are, happening now. It needs to be, and plus, I have a platform. I have a platform with a lot of people, and I want to get it out there. So there might be people that would not agree with me. I notice I get some unfriendings after I post stuff like that, and that's fine. But I mean, that's not something I'd want to microdose at. Shooting a protest.
Right. That might be a bit much. I am curious so I don't go to any of these. I'm a new dad. I've got a 9-month-old.
Oh.
And so, I mean, you remember, thank you. Yeah. I'm couldn't be happier. It's like the most amazing thing in the world that I never wanted to do. But I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
And so you're not the first year you're doing what you need to do. There's not a lot of time for extracurriculars. Plus, you want to stay safe. Like there's no time for me to take a rubber bullet.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Not in the day's plan.
Yeah. But I'm very interested in how things are playing out, and I do care very deeply.
Sure.
And I'm curious what your takeaways are. What are you learning from going to these things and participating in this way?
Wow. Well, I'm learning this so much divisiveness. And, in the past, I guess it was always there, but with Facebook and Fox News and cable news, so-called news, it could put it out there to so many people and make it seem like it's authentic and real. And it's not, you could spread, a lie can spread really fast. Fake news can spread super fast and become believable. And I've seen the fake news on both sides, people promoting stuff. I'm like, no, don't do that. But I just think right now we live in a particularly scary time. And, I just hope this election changes things in a good way, that we can move forward again and try to heal, as a nation, as a world. I mean, maybe that sounds a little utopian, but I don't know,
Right. What does healing look like? Because there is such divisiveness. It's almost as if for one group to heal, another part has to be wounded.
Well, it has to be, people have to be willing to have a dialogue, open a dialogue with people, and without it being judgmental or attacking, I have some friends, a few friends that are on the side of the current administration, and but we don't go there. I have one friend that we did discuss it, but it doesn't go anywhere. People have to feel the change within, I guess, have to be enlightened. And I don't know how that's going to happen.
Right. And I'm always curious, I do try to work out in my own head. How do I disagree with people well? How do you disagree with dignity and care?
I know I try to be an example sometimes, and I don't post negative things on my Facebook page. I have, sometimes I'm so tempted to,
Right.
and I don't, because I'm a believer in the law of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
which is a concept where positivity attracts positivity. Good thoughts attract more good thoughts. Negative feelings attract more negative feelings. So I try to keep a beacon of positivity and promote good things.
Right.
I just hope it spreads. I mean, people, you just don't know. I try to be an example. I mean, I'm imperfect just as anyone else is, but I try to do what I can. It's the best you can do. Be a good influencer.
Right. And then, so how does the law of attraction, so you were saying that you just have a way of being in the right place for the right shot. How
Right.
does the law of attraction play into that?
Well, I think if you want something, at least with me, I mean, if you want something bad enough, you might actually get it. Now, obviously you can't, well, I'm saying you obviously can't want to walk on the Mars, as bad as you want to walk on Mars, it's probably not going to happen. But if there's certain things that are based on reality that could happen,
Mm-hmm.
really wishing them to happen. I'm not saying just like, wishing and it appears, but you might act differently in what you do to make that happen, whether it's if it's something economic, like I need more funds to make this thing happen for my family,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe then you start to think like, oh, maybe I should call those old clients. It's going out of my comfort zone to do that,
Right.
but I'll do it anyway. That's where I believe the law of attraction, not like a total woo-woo thing. I just wish it, and like a genie, it gives it to you. You have to make it ultimately happen. But
well, it reminds me what you said before about when you are a certain way, it attracts that. So it's not just sort of like wanting to create more abundance. The question is sort of like, what kind of person creates more abundance?
yeah,
and it's
exactly.
the kind of person who does the thing they need to do, even if it's outside their comfort zone.
Absolutely. So when I say that, yeah, like at a young age, I was like, I wanted to be a great concert photographer. I wanted to be, do the things that I saw in the magazines of other photographers that I saw when I was a teenager. And all of that happened, but it didn't happen just because I wished it to happen. It happened because I made it happen. Camera. I had to buy a camera. Exactly. I had to be there. You have to be there. You can't do it without being there. And then with being there, you might happen to bump into somebody, and that somebody might be an angel that holds a key, figuratively speaking. And now that
Sure.
angel with the key has granted you photo access for this particular show.
Sure.
Oh, that person liked you. You weren't a douchebag. Oh, you want to come back and do that again? You know what I mean? So things just, the wheels, the gears are slowly turning in their direction.
And isn't it cool? I mean, that environment, especially, you know, with all of the things happening and all of the people who are kind of running on a high vibe, how we all get to be each other's angels sometimes.
Exactly. It's great to be an angel for somebody. And of course, I've been the recipient of angels. You know, there's those few people in your life who are key people who have opened doors for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always grateful and indebted and thankful for those particular people.
Right. And of course, you know, it makes me think, you know, the thing that we do to pay it back is to pay it forward, is to then,
Right.
you know, continue to use the gifts we've been given to benefit others, you know, to.
Exactly. Like there's a photographer I know who's, he's a well-known photographer, and he's really good at what he does. And he's
I know we tried to get him, but he wasn't available.
Oh, well,
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't think it was who you're talking about. No, and this other.
No, I wanted you. I'm kidding.
So this photographer who's made quite a name for himself. So anyway, he got in touch with me. He's not in the Bay Area. And he got in touch with me some time ago and told me about an event that I totally forgot about. He said the first time that he photographed the Grateful Dead in the concert pit at Shoreline in the early 90s, he said that I was the only photographer that talked to him and was nice to him and actually gave him some pointers. And I don't remember it at all. I was like, I did? Oh, okay. And he credits me for giving him some amount of confidence and push to keep doing it. And now he makes a full-time living at it, and he's great, you know, we're friends and stuff.
And he's contributed to like the sum total of like beauty and goodness in the world.
Totally.
Because you were nice to him one day at Shoreline.
Well, that's just part of his journey. I mean, I was just that part of it. And I know there were many other aspects to it, including his own creativity and push and drive. But, I don't like mentioning names and these things, so I'm not, but embarrass him. But he told me that, and I was like, oh, I felt happy, even though I didn't remember it, that because he said everybody else was snooty.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, is that sometimes there is this overwhelming kindness and sometimes there is this overwhelming sort of cliquishness.
I know. I don't know. I mean, I try to be nice to everybody to a fault. And, if somebody wants to prove themselves to be otherwise, well, I give people the benefit of the doubt.
That's one of the neat things about Terrapin, is I would be at Terrapin sometimes at a bar show, and there would be like some guy who was in town. He works at like a paper factory, and there was like a paper factory conference in San Jose, and he drove all the way up just to go to Terrapin because he's from Sheboygan.
Sheboygan. I've been to Sheboygan.
Or wherever,
I just love saying that word, Sheboygan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't it sort of incumbent upon us to, and wouldn't we just want to be like super nice to the guy who comes to like our home venue, because it's like that special to him. And it's like the privilege, perhaps, to talk about, social issues, the privilege we have to sort of just pop in for a drink there.
Oh my God. I live 15 minutes from the place. It's ridiculous.
I used to live kayaking distance.
Ah, okay.
we kayak, it's like, all of the ways that we've traveled to see the dead, I got to add kayak to it.
Kayak. That's good. Not a lot of people could do that. No, I know when I've run into people at Terrapin, somebody says, oh, it's my friend's first time here. I always make sure to give them a big welcome, big hello, big welcome. And, it's easy to take it for granted living here, but really, it's a treasure, Oh, you know what I was thinking of? I got a few more photos I'd like to show you and have a few more cool stories.
For him, yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me just open up this thing here. I moved it off my screen. Oh, it is. Let me hit it over to share screen. All right. share the screen. And there we go. So this show here, this was a great show. This is the outside of the venue. This is William and Mary, the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. This is on April 15th, 1978. And you can see my friend David over here holding up something, noticing I'm taking the picture. But anyhow, at this show, I was wandering around outside the show, and let me see if I could find another shot from outside the show. Phil was walking around outside the show wearing his Duke University shirt from the show they played there a few days earlier. That video from Duke a few days earlier is a popular video because the Dead are super lively on that video. I think it's like 4/12/78 or something like that. You should check it out. Jerry's like going crazy with the guitar. But anyhow, there was a person on the scene back then named Jester. Jester is no longer with us, but he was the guy with the acid. You know, he was the guy with the good acid. So I was hanging out before the show, like this scene here, and I ran into him, and he asked me if I wanted to get high, and I said, sure. So he laid me down on the grass. He said, lay down on the grass. I laid down on the grass. And he goes, okay, open your eye. And he took an eyedropper out. And I'm like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm going to drop it in your eye. You're going to drop the LSD in my eye? I go, is that okay? He goes, yeah, it's okay. And yeah, it was okay. So I never took acid that way before. Liquid drop to the eye. So the show started. That's what it looked like inside. And they did morning dew that night. And it was my first morning dew. It was the only morning dew they played the whole year. That's just crazy, because if I didn't go to this show, that's one of my favorite songs that I wanted to see. And it would have been till probably another year or two later till I got to see it. So just the confluence of taking that liquid drop in the eye, getting some cool shots, and seeing my first morning dew, the only one they played that year at this interesting venue.
Rest in peace, Jester.
Jester, yeah. He had this other guy that I always associated with him, and he and I are friends now on Facebook, and he's a family man, and he's a doctor, actually. Occasionally we reminisce about those days, but you wouldn't know it by looking at him that he was, involved in all of that craziness. And then a scene like this, I mean, this is the kind of scene, you live for, right? You visualize a Grateful Dead hangout should be, hanging before the show in upstate New York on a beautiful summer day. It's just good, carefree times. And let me get over to this place in Europe. So I went on the Europe tour in '81. So I missed the Europe '72 tour. I was too young. And when I found out the Dead were doing another tour in Europe, I was like, I got to do this. I'd never been to Europe before. This is pre-internet, so you just had to figure things out, get a passport, get a flight, not quite knowing exactly the dates of the tour and where they're playing, but just kind of wing it. So at one of the shows, they canceled the next two shows that were going to be in France. And they said the show that they were going to start next was going to be in Paris. But there was a few days gap. So one guy that I met on this tour I was traveling with, he was an insider. So he goes, oh, they're going to play at this hash bar in Amsterdam. So I was like, well, I have a Eurail pass and a few days off. I might as well go to Amsterdam anyway. I'd like to see Amsterdam. So I got there late at night. And then the next day, I found where this club was. So there's me on the left, a bunch of other people here. And there wasn't a handwritten sign, Grateful Dead tonight at, whoops.
That's great. I love the handwritten sign. And like the kind of melange of different languages.
Right. So it was just like, holy cow, they're going to play here tonight. It's real. Here's a close-up of the door, just the door. So the door you can't see because it's all painted the same thing. It's kind of like this shape here. I don't know if you see my mouse on it. So I went back to this club for the first time since this show 2 years ago. I was in Amsterdam with my family. Oh no, actually, that was a different time. Sorry. I was there with my wife 2 years ago. So she's heard me talk about this for our whole time together. So we went down to the club, and the door was open. Looked a little different, a little more modern. The guy let us in. This guy let us in. I told him I was at the Dead show, and he said, "Oh, I worked there that night." So he was around my age, and so he took me to the room where the Dead played. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe I was back in this room, because I was like, the last memory of it was like tripping. Dan Healy was in the crowd, and they were playing the Talking Heads' "Take Me to the River" after the show was over, and just being back there. But this is what it looked like inside, like close up, Jerry. And the thing is, when just being in there, in any case, would have been pretty far out, because it was a very small club. The Deadwood, Garcia and Weir were playing just different instruments that they had bought that day in Amsterdam. They also broke out tunes that they have never played before or haven't played in a long time, like "Turn On Your Love Light." They did an acoustic set one night, which, they hadn't done since Radio City. So it had all these things happening. Plus I was tripping, to make it because acid seems to amplify things. So, the acoustic set was Bob Weir's 34th birthday.
I like,
Jerry?
I like when we see Jerry playing unusual guitars, like that Yamaha
Yeah.
is not like a guitar that you often see Jerry playing.
In fact, you'll never see him ever playing again. He had it for those 2 nights. So,
It was probably just something that was like around.
well, I was told the real story, because, the story all along was that they were borrowed or rented instruments. But Steve Parrish, I asked him to write something for my Jerry book. And I said, why don't you write about the Milkweg? What was the deal with the Milkweg story? So I'm not going to go into the whole story, but the gist of it was they went guitar shopping that day in Amsterdam. And they went to this guitar shop where the people in there had no idea who Jerry Garcia or Bob Weir was. They were total, just these guys coming in to buy guitars. So Bobby picked up a white Telly, and Steve said Jerry wanted this guitar that was shaped like a gun-shaped guitar. And he talked him out of it. And probably a good thing. And for some reason, he picked this Yamaha. Maybe it just felt good in his hands. It's an inexpensive guitar. Nothing too fancy about it.
Right.
But it goes to show, the equipment doesn't matter as much as the person playing it. Because if you listen to tapes or see the video from the shows, they were, they're outstanding stuff. And this was the next day after those 2 shows at the show in Paris, where the tour resumed. And I was pretty fried, because this was my 3rd show in a row.
Right. And that artist who does those shirts, is that
Mickey O.
Right. It's a Mickey O shirt.
Yeah, and it's a purple tie-dye. It's called Lady with a Fan. Mm-hmm. I still have it in my retired shirts drawer. I mean, I'm thin, but I'm not that thin anymore. So it.
That sounds like it's its own little project, like its own little artistic blog post or something. Bob Minkin's retired shirt drawer.
I'm a keeper of stuff. I'm a pack rat with all this kind of stuff. I have all my ticket stubs and all this stuff that goes along with it, including the shirts. Because the shirts are integral, it brings you back to that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here's an old shot. This is the peyote shot. My friend's house in Canarsie, Brooklyn. That's a Grateful Dead bootleg album with peyote buttons on it that we did. That was the only time we did it. So, it was involved. It was not easy to get, and we didn't know a whole lot about it. So it's a real time capsule. I'm glad I got these shots.
What was that night like?
I'll tell you, to be honest, I really don't remember. This was a
Perfect.
long time. It was a long time ago. I remember one funny thing though. These peyote buttons, I think they had hairs in them.
Okay.
And my friend, this joke that we still joke about today, I'm still friends with David, person whose house this was. He read that if you don't take all the hairs out or something like that, you'll get a massive internal itch. And just those words, massive internal itch, just usually provoked us to laughter at the thought of it.
Right.
So that's one of those things that has lived on through the decades. And then,
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then And I was just going to show since I have it here, cover of my current book is Just Jerry. And I was really happy to get a forward by Bob Weir. You know, he said he would do it early on, but saying you're going to do it and doing it are two different things.
Right.
But he came through with the greatest forward ever. You know, I mean, he's a writer, he's a songwriter. He wrote it so wonderfully.
Yes.
And I was so happy with it. And Dennis McNally was the perfect person for the introduction. He's a dear friend as well, but you know, he helped me out a lot in the early days of my access with the Grateful Dead. So it's just so cool to have this turnaround years later and him writing the introduction, you know, for the book, which has a lot of cool stories in it and stuff.
So where do people get these? We need to get the Just Jerry book, so we get a forward by Bob Weir. We need to.
Yeah, it's worth it for that alone. And then you
then
get those 500 photos.
The 500 photos, but then The Music Never Stopped has the Steve Parrish intro.
Well, Parrish is in this one, but Parrish is that's right. He's also does The Music Never Stopped. He also did Live Dead, but that's not available. But basically, where can you get this? You can get all these good things, including the photos, if you want to check them out, at minkinphotographystore.com. minkinphotographystore.com. And there's all kinds of cool galleries there that you could just check out just for fun too.
Right on. And so how else are there other social channels? Are there any other projects coming up, or people should just try and find you on the trails?
Well, yes, the trail. So, I do have some more book projects coming up. I'm toying around. I'm a pilot. I don't know if you know that. I fly a airplane for fun, and I do a lot of aerial photography. So I'm kicking around the idea of doing an aerial photography book. I shoot a lot over the Bay Area. Something entitled like High Over San Francisco, something like that.
Right on.
And I do have some more music-related books in the hoppers, but I'll talk about those more once they're a little more closer to fruition. But in the meantime, Just Jerry and all the photos are at minkinphotography.com.
Any last thoughts that you want to share with people about being an angel, about, what you've learned through your journeys, how you want people to move forward, what your hopes for people moving forward in the world in times like this are?
Yeah, I would say, I know, like I mentioned it a few times, talked about the anxiety levels going on now. Mm-hmm. And just remember not to let it take away your hope for the future, because I just believe things will get better. You have to believe things will get better.
Right.
And to stay a compassionate person and a giving person, and to help out people that need help more than you do, and just pay it forward. Try to be an example as much as you're able to. Nobody's perfect, and everybody has their moments, but just try to be as good as you can.
Right on.
Make the world a better place. Leave it better than you found it,
Right. Couldn't have said it better. Bob Minkin, thank you so much for being our guest here on Instrumental Breakthroughs.
Oh, thank you so much for giving me and us this forum to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah. It seems that the people on the Facebook are really loving it. They're sending you lots of love. I know that your work is deeply appreciated by so many.
Oh, thank you.
And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This has been Instrumental Breakthroughs. I am your host, Daniel Shankin, and we love you very much. Hope you have an amazing day.
All right. Peace out.
Peace.